what is your opinion on outdoor fire pits?
Garrett is all about that beachfront property. Damn, oh God, as soon as I got here, I'm like, oh, this is so pretty. But for Kyle, a candlelit castle is more his style.
Oh man, candles. I love candles. I'm so nuts for candles.
Can these two find the perfect plot for their free company? Find out on tonight's House Hunting Eorzea. Kyle?
Garrett?
I've never played an MMO with player housing.
Well, you have. You have! How could you forget about Warlords of Draenor?
I will repeat, Kyle, I've never played an MMO with player housing. What I definitely have done, though, is play an MMO where the players want player housing. They really, really want it. So, going into our experience of the past week of exploring housing in Final Fantasy XIV, I was pretty excited to see what all the fuss was about. I personally haven't put a lot of thought into player housing. I can't say it's a feature I have thought much about, but I dove in deep, man. I saw a lot of houses. I have now visited all of the wards. I was up way past my bedtime just checking out awesome houses from folks that watch our videos or join us for our live streams.
Our community invited us into their homes, their hard-worked personal space, and it was awesome to see what people had done in there. I've heard glamour is the true end game, but housing is the end game. This is where adventuring meets crafting, meets income, meets the auction house business. Like, this is the peak of RP and customization. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, look at the Animal Crossing craze. Look at how people put effort into just how they appear in the raid. This is the truest expression of a lived-in game, and it is filled out. There is so much you can do with this player housing that, honestly, I'm impressed. I'm blown away. I want to spend a lot of real-world money upgrading my own house now.
I've gone from 0 to 100 very quickly on knowing absolute jack squat about how housing works in Final Fantasy XIV to experiencing a lot of what housing in Final Fantasy XIV has to offer. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The goal of today's video, we are here to tell you from a new player's perspective what this whole experience has been like, which housing wards we like the most, what a house can be to a player and how impressive the customization is, and our final thoughts on how much we do or maybe do not want to get into housing. Maybe we already sound a little too excited, but we'll get to that point. There are a lot of places that you can choose to drop a house down in Final Fantasy XIV. Second thought, not enough places, and yet so many places that you could drop a house in Final Fantasy XIV if you're lucky enough to get through the lottery boss.
This is vastly improved over the past, which people used bots and just sitting there clicking and camping out in order to get a house. The new lottery system is way preferred over that, as players bid and are randomly selected as long as they have enough gil, the in-game money, on the plot that they wish. There can't be enough of it. Everybody wants a house. There are neighborhoods, subdivisions, locations, and some of these have different amenities, such as beachfront property, or being by the waterfall, or having a little moat around them. Depending on where you place your house and the size of the lot, they're going to have different feels. And some of these are extremely competitive. Now, in the future, there is going to be some sort of, private island sort of patch that comes out where everyone can get a home, but the real excitement of putting this much work into the game is so people can see it. And that is why housing is limited, because you can go visit these houses. You can take a stroll through the wards, through the neighborhoods, walk on up, and if the door's unlocked, you can go take a look around.
The thing that surprised me is I was expecting a Garrison adjacent experience coming from playing World of Warcraft, but I figured there'd be more instancing to it, and there are. If you want to go to any of the wards, I was surprised to see that there were so many copied versions. Essentially, this is me failing to find correct words, but there's a lot of options of the same ward. So in that way, there are these kind of instanced areas, but they're sprawling. And there are a ton of individual unique houses. And I don't really know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. And I was really impressed that you can go to these neighborhoods. So there's really nothing stopping me from one day, if I'm bored, just going, visiting as many wards as I can and just taking a stroll through and seeing what everybody has done with their homes. Because at the very least, you can see the outside, even if you can't go on the inside. And as we found out on stream this week, if you do go inside, you can spend hours just looking at all of the different ways that people have customized the house. But to me, working with a free company, we're trying to decide where we want to build a house. This was the number one thing I wanted to wrap my head around. I wanted to see all of the options for where we could try and secure an in-game home and just see what the neighborhood was like. It's ridiculous how analogous this was to my real world home buying experience, Kyle. And it still is. It is still analogous up to the crippling uncertainty on if I'll actually get the house I want. Let's talk about the wards, dude. This is really the only part of this video where I kind of want to go one by one because the wards are so cool. They're so unique from one another. Like, what do you like in Final Fantasy? What zone speaks to you? There's a good chance one of the wards is going to scratch that itch because you have your option of wards in the 3 original starting zones of Gridani, Ul'dah, and Limsa, as well as newer wards for Hingashi from Stormblood, and the latest addition for wards, Empyreum, which is based out of Ishgard.
There are elements of the zone that will end up inside the house, but they're pretty minimal. I mean, if you want to have a cozy cottage, for instance, that looks like it belongs on the outskirts of Yosemite, you can have that in Shirogane. That's fine. That can be done. There will be minimal influence once you get inside, but the outside really does set a tone. And starting with the Limsa Lominsa zone, Mist, this is your beachfront property. This is your classic white stone down to the beach, lots of little waterways, a slight castle vibe, but very classic.
I'm a Florida denizen. I'm one of those rare individuals that was actually born in this weird state that everyone likes to make fun of. I love going down to Key West. It's one of my favorite places to visit. It's a long drive, but I can make it and I don't need to get on a plane. It's wonderful. Limsa gives me that vibe a little bit. And so for me, Limsa is down the road. If I decide I want my own little personal home, Limsa is 110% where I'm going to just do everything in my power to try and get a small plot. I really like it. It gives me that beachy island vibe, even though there's, a mega city in the background.
The only real downside I felt here was that the houses were really close together. And in that way, I feel like you could be encroached on by your neighbors. You never know if the Chocobo house is going to... I shouldn't rip on the Chocobo house.
You should rip on you rip on it. I think the Chocobo house is the most hideous thing I laid eyes upon. I'm so sorry. Listen, here's what it goes. If the Chocobo house floats your boat, it's your house. Do what you want. You know what else I truly believe? If I truly believe the Chocobo house offends my eyeballs, you know what else I believe in? HOAs suck. So people like me shouldn't be able to tell people like you what your house should look like. So let your chicken flag fly.
It might be more the dangle trees that you'd have to worry about because those are the only ones that kind of stretched out of a property, but these are a little on top of each other. And if you don't get one of those moated on a pedestal houses in the Mist, I can see their decorations interfering with your aesthetic a little bit.
For me, of the 3 starting zone wards, the Mist is my favorite. What did you think of Lavender Beds, the Gridani award?
I like the big tree. The bridges kind of give it a chaotic feel, and it seems like it's easy to get lost here, but this place at night, with the night sky above and the kind of acorn lanterns, very wilderness lodgy.
I like the covered bridges. It's probably my favorite little touch about Lavender Beds.
One of the main features that attracts players to build a house here is that you get a green lawn, but that green lawn also grows its own little natural flowers. So if you're doing anything flower-centric, hey, Lavender Bed is for you.
And then there's the Goblin, based out of Ul'dah.
Boy, this place gets ripped on.
It does, and
people hate the goblet.
I get it a little, but I honestly think I think Gridania might be my personal least favorite, and I think I actually prefer the goblet over Gridania. Now, to be extremely clear, I think all of this stuff, everything with player housing, like what ward you prefer, what you want your house to look like, this is so deeply, intensely personal, right? So there's just something about Gridania. I typically really like forests in fantasy games. There's something about Gridania in Final Fantasy XIV that doesn't do a whole lot for me. It's just kind of a thick forest. Whatever the case is, I'm going to go to bat for the goblet here and say of the 3 starting area wards, the goblet feels the most high fantasy. And I mean that literally. You are so high up in the goblet. When I looked down and I saw the pillar of the mountains that we were set upon just descending down into the abyss, I was impressed.
It's got the big windmills spinning, the big sky of the desert out ahead. I'm the New Mexico boy here, so I kind of loved it. Plus the elevation, you're getting that chill wind that would be blowing across this area. The rain in the desert is a welcome sight. I love the stone pillar interior that you get. This would be the perfect place to build like a temple looking home. Because I know you on the outside you can get some ruins going on and kind of cut the plants.
I like the goblet. I can see why some people wouldn't, especially again when you're thinking about it in this term of like this very personal experience of making this house your own. What kind of house do you want, right? Like for a lot of us, I think traditionally you want that lawn, right? Like a lot of people are into their lawn, and I can see that being a detractor here. But as someone who also visits New Mexico frequently, ain't nothing wrong with a nice designed stone lawn. I like that. So none of that bothers me in the goblet.
Maybe it's kind of the bowl shape of the goblet that people dislike the goblet. Maybe that's why it's named that. You really feel like you are surrounded by neighbors. The mist is kind of on top of each other, close to your neighbors. You kind of have this cascade stadium seating down to the beach so everyone gets a view. Here in the goblet, you are very restricted, looking out the window. Well, you can't really look out the windows to see your neighbors. That would be insane on the graphical requirements, but looking side to side, you're likely, if you're in a prime selection, going to be looking at the sandstone pool, which is nice. I could really go for building something like Egyptian kind of looking temple in here, making some traps, putting some loot in the basement.
I would go more the Tatooine route. Make it look, which if nothing else, is Space New Mexico. It's a very Adobe inspired. I'm really kind of talking to myself in the goblet right now. Anyway.
That'd be really fun to make. You use the steampunk kind of environments that are available and put those, get your moisture evaporators kind of constructed out of a couple objects.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Ooh, do I want my eventual future tiny house?
Oh my God, we could build the hut seat. You could get the little platform and then put the grating on the floor. And then you could do a Rancor pit in the basement. I don't know if you could get to the basement in a hole like that.
I don't think you can make a hole like that, but you could still theme it that way. You could still
theme it like the Rancor basement. Yeah,
you could put something on the floor that looks like a trapdoor, and then design your basement that way. I love it. I love it. I love it. You know what else I love? Honestly, all the remaining wards. I know Empyreum is the newer one, but I want to talk about that before we get into Shirogane. Ishgard ward, the newest ward. You and I wouldn't say we're hot off of Heaven's Ward now, because we're actually almost to patch content of Stormblood at the time of recording this. Ishgard really, really worked its way into my heart. I loved Heaven's Ward. I think it's one of the best gaming experiences I've had, period. And part of that is the aesthetic of it, the world that we're exploring, and constantly hanging out in Ishgard. I really love that gothic-ass, ridiculous, operatic cathedral vibe that goes on in that city, and you can move in. You can move there if you want.
And it's the center backdrop. The castles are ever present over this great stonework that you would build your home upon.
Kyle, do you want to just literally live, like build a house and live on a street in a Souls game?
You could set up your mannequins to look like the suits of armor that stand around, just go full castle. It's really tempting, and it's super available. People aren't really competing for the Empyreum yet. That does mean you don't know who your neighbors are going to be. You might end up next to a rowdy free company. I think one of the big knocks against it is that it's cold. And everywhere you're going to hang out, you are going to have the cold breath coming out of your face. After all, if you own a house, you're doing a little bit of RP in the first place. So you're going to need a fire pit outside. That's required. You're going to need to cozy this up a little bit and make it feel less oppressive because it will be snowy, cold forever.
Finally, let's go over to Hingashi Shirogane. I think this is my favorite one.
Oh, what a presentation. You enter right there on the strip.
I don't want it to be. I feel like you are a basic Final Fantasy XIV bitch if Shirogane is your favorite ward. It is so well executed. As someone who has to go to Japan every time I visit Epcot. Oh, God, I love it.
They knew exactly what you wanted here. You wanted a festival feeling in the street markets, heading toward your home, which is going to be on a beautiful beach. And if it's not on a beautiful beach, you're by a waterfall, you're by some cascading rocks down to the beach. It's got that mist seating that every house kind of has a view outwards. The backdrop is great. Like, the Kugane tile set has so much love in it that I think this is the best designed district they made.
Shirogane just uses the space really well. That entryway is awesome. It just makes it look lived in. And it's the only one that I think really gets across this idea of like city living, if that makes sense. Like it feels urban. It feels like if you were a young hip individual. And again, my brain goes, it's now morphing into real world house hunting. This would be the kind of place you would want to live if you want things to do. Because it's just a vibe, right? But at the end of the day, it just seems alive. It seems bustling. It has that fantasy market feel to it.
Well, and all of them have access to the same amenities, whether it's the market board or the little shopkeeps that are in these wards. Shirogane is like the only one that I would use because I want to go there, because it feels active with the NPCs that are in the area.
When we did our big housing tour stream, it was the first time I wore like casual clothes in Final Fantasy XIV, and it gets its hooks in you. It makes you want to role play. It makes you want to think about that, get invested in your character, think about the type of activity you're about to take off on. I don't think I've ever done that in World of Warcraft. It's cool. It's special. It's really making Final Fantasy XIV set itself apart. What can a house be to a player? We went on an extensive housing tour. Every house that we visited, it was extremely unique. The level of customization, it was so impressive. It's like you would see like repeated props and decorations, right? But the overall, no two houses seemed even remotely alike. What did we do, a 4-hour tour?
Yeah.
What a house can be to a player it can mean so many different things, but to me, it seems like there's two really big major distinctions, and it's even one in the game itself, which is this going to be a house? Is it going to be a meeting place for you and your free company, or is it a more intimate space that's for you, just yourself, or up to, your close friends, your close gaming crew? What's the word everyone's using now, Kyle?
Static?
You're static.
Yeah.
It was something I noticed while touring the homes, is that it was player-driven visual storytelling. I could kind of tell from the houses that I was visiting which one it was. I almost knew it was a free company house before I saw the door that I could click on to visit the individual apartments, because it just seemed like if it was set up for a free company, it had more of a common area vibe going on to how they decorated the common spaces of the home, because you can also then go one level deeper and buy your own personal room within the free company house. Whereas when we would go into the homes that were not free company houses, they seemed much more intimate and done up like you would an actual home, a place you would live, right? It was less dormitory and more a lived-in house.
We're very new into understanding housing, and obviously by requesting, we want to see your house and what this can show off. We saw a lot of themed homes. What we didn't see in our tour was what someone might do with their home that they're not exactly decorating. Like, a lot of people use this as storage or a way to highlight their adventures. Mix and match. It's a hodgepodge of items they've received through doing raids and experiencing trials and going through the game. I mean,
A trophy room, essentially.
Yeah, trophy room is a great way to put it. Just recently, we received one of Alphino's drawings as a thing that could go on the wall.
Insert behold my stuff here.
Yeah, and then the free company idea that this is a meeting place, that you can build a Knights of the Round Table room for your guild to have a conversation in, or where everybody's going to meet up before you head out is super cool.
We saw so many different layers of customization, so many different types of rooms. I mean, I think the thing everybody has is a bar, which applause, I respect as a cocktail enthusiast. You got to have it.
And it was really impressive. Plus the food that was available in this game.
I was so hungry by the end of our stream.
We're still in Stormblood. We just got out of PS3 graphics. The food isn't quite there yet, so maybe in future expansions where all these items are from, but it's starting to look really good. The lighting people are able to build with that, the bars, the restaurants that people put together were really impressive. The kitchens.
The people did like full on bakeries, cafes. You know, you want to talk about bars. I know you're a giant coffee nerd. The cafes were really cool. I was surprised how many movie theaters I saw. I wasn't expecting that to be a thing, but it seemed like that was a popular themed room in free company homes. Fighting pits were a thing. And y'all love stripper poles. Big fans.
We ended up in an excellent club with speakers, a custom turntable that was built. The lighting is really impressive. The fact that it actually casts onto the objects, the windows that were available in the mist that shot the stained glass onto the floor, onto the characters, using that lighting plus the walls to darken a room. It was amazing how each restaurant and bar could be so different from each other.
It put me in touch with my long lost Sims fandom. I haven't played The Sims in a very long time. I used to be all about it. And it also brought me like tones of when you and I played Valheim. Because you multiple times talked about how the game was really, you were getting into it because you knew I was going to log in and I was going to see how you changed up our base. That's really stuck with me since last year when we played through Valheim, because I hadn't really thought about that, because sometimes I'm happy to build just to build and I don't need people to see it. But it makes a lot of sense as a driving factor of I'm getting invested in this because I know other people are going to get to appreciate what I spent time on. And that is so at the core of what I am finding fascinating and fun and worthy of my time and research and interest with housing in Final Fantasy XIV.
And you've got the glamour system, which can override your armor, but housing is something that will continue to be built on regardless of expansion. This is your home. This is where you chose to decorate your stuff, and that gives you a through line. And when you decide to go out and quest, are you doing it for gear? Or are you doing it for that sweet throne room set that you're looking for? Like, those additional motivating factors. I mean, speaking of Valheim, you were out grinding hard, getting a sword day after day. I was making a trophy room back at the base. The form and function, it gives so much more to the game than is originally present. Now, there are, of course, limitations with this system, and there's different housing plots, and whether or not that house is going to be a free company, and each housing size allows a different amount of items inside of it. So what was really cool to see, particularly in the larger homes, was how people brought in the walls and restricted the space in order to fill it out more, and change their space using walls, get rid of entire rooms just so that the rooms they did have could be more dense with objects and take advantage of that limited item count.
Yeah, that was something I didn't realize. Like, as I started to understand that there was this limitation of how many items you could have, I thought that was clever as hell. And it points to that importance on, like, when it comes to visual design, vigor is not always better, because you want to fill the space. You want a good use of space. Do we want to get into housing? I have a feeling that if you listen to the tone of our voice, we gave away the goose. I think we both sound a little excited about this.
I really like that Tatooine idea we had.
In the future, Kyle, you and I can go in together on a small, and we'll just we'll make ourselves our Obi-Wan hideout. But yeah, dude, we made a wish list. Like, during that tour, we wrote down like the things like, oh, we need, like, we have to have this. I feel like we learned a lot about each other. I feel like we're ready to move in together.
Yeah, we could share space easily. And not all places we saw were a unified thought. In fact, we went by one free company that looked like basically they had divided up the rooms amongst the guildmates. And it was insanity.
It was
It worked.
It was very frat house.
Yeah.
Which is funny because we visited a home that was a literal sorority, but that one felt that one was a little more like cohesive, not as like a good or bad thing either. Because the house you're describing was really cool and really fun. I liked that they had these like room by room themes. It felt like a common space. Like this is kind of like, oh, hey, what do we have? Oh, meeting night? Where are we meeting? Movie theater tonight. We haven't hung out in the movie theater in a while. Let's go have a meeting in there.
The movie theater's a little bit improvised, right? Like this is where people have started to combine objects in a very Minecrafty way by taking 4 chairs together plus a painting and several lighting fixtures. You make a screen. Glitching those objects together, perhaps, can make a pool table as well. So there's opportunities to build outside of the pre-built items we have. But obviously, Final Fantasy wants us to have a bar.
That's the number one thing on my wish list. I'm a big cocktail nerd. It's a huge hobby in my real life. I want a sweet bar in Final Fantasy. I have not seen a tiki bar, and I want to do a tiki style bar. I want palms. I want bamboo situations. I didn't see anything like that. And so if anyone knows or can link me to some examples of people who have attempted to make a tiki atmosphere, I would really appreciate it.
Also, libraries. Very easy to pull off. Books stacked on top of each other, a nice cozy fireplace, a big armchair nearby, a nice desk full of paperwork. An easy to use, it seemed, secret passage through a bookshelf. Love the idea of a secret passage. The whole library feel changed so much by the lighting.
Oh, yes. We've heard tale of other content creators that set up a podcasting space in their home so that people can gather in-game while they also enjoy the live recording of a podcast. And Kyle, when are we doing this?
That sounds really fun. And your character's sitting there. You get a little audience set up. We custom build some microphones in a little booth. Oh, and we saw guitars, like actual guitars in the game, so we could make it a full-blown recording studio. Do they have anything that's like these foams? Do they have any like foam
tiles? I don't know, but I imagine there's things you can hang on the wall and probably customize the look over the color of in some way, so it looks like it's a wall tile. You know, high-end recording studios have wood paneling, Kyle.
That's true. We could do wood pan. I'm sure it would be very object expensive, as each one of the tiles would have to be an object off your count of 200, 300, and limit your options there.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Candles. I love candles. I love Diablo. I don't give a crap if those candles have been burning for 500 years in the tomb of some Skyrim dungeon. I love candles. Zero justification needed. Candles in circles, candles on walls, candles just pouring over each other on top of skulls. I love them.
The demon wall, I think, is number one singular item I must have, as well as the Halloween bucket of candy that I saw in one of the homes we visited.
Yeah, I wonder how easy it would be to decorate for the holidays. Could you leave like a 25 item limit and then have a guild box in there and everyone could kind of help out and the holidays roll in?
That would be a smart way to go about it in my head. Comment below if you have cracked this nut, if you know how the best way about doing this. But yeah, whatever it ends up being, if it's 15, if it's 20, if it's 25, and whatever season you're in, just leave it out until the next season. So your home is just always decorated for whatever season you're in.
Since this is going to be a place for our free company to meet up and gather, we saw the Sultana's table. We saw a more Ishgardian Knights of the Round style table room, which is also adjacent to a hot tub. By the way, was there a single house that didn't have a hot tub? The small cabin didn't have a hot tub, but hot tubs were really popular. In fact, one house had 3 hot tubs, plus a secret hot tub.
I don't want to know what happens in that secret hot tub. I'm hoping our bid goes through. I'm hoping we are successful with our first attempt at purchasing a home in Final Fantasy XIV. If you have advice, keep it simple. I don't need a manifesto, but if you have advice on easy pitfalls of buying your first home, decorating your first home, all of that kind of stuff. If you've got a good guide for how to decorate homes that you particularly like, please let us know in the comments below. Drop us a link. Help guide us as we take this big step into a massive corner of this game that we like to play, Final Fantasy XIV. As always, please like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and join us Mondays and Thursdays for our live streams right here on the channel. So until next time, GG.